I know things you never see. You never see someone taking a shit while running at full speed.
Come on, kid, get rid of some of them turds in the shit box.
Welcome to the Bathroom Break Podcast with me, Rab himself. Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Rab from the Bathroom Break Podcast. Just wanted to take a minute to thank you all for listening to the podcast. It's been a lot of fun to sit down with some really interesting people and shoot the shit, talk all that poop and stuff. But, yeah, we want to try and make this thing better for you, so we're going to need to raise some funds. If you head over to greengate.bigcartel.com, there's a donation link there. If you feel so inclined to donate to the Bathroom Break Podcast, awesome. If not, sit back and listen. We're going to talk some crap.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have ignition. And sitting to my right is the legendary Chris Rab.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. So
Dude.
This is the maiden voyage, man. This is the first trip out to record a podcast in our bitchin' new camper van. And it's been a bit of a test run. So I'm just going to fucking start it off. I'm wondering, how much do you get recognized from your work on Jackass and stuff?
Me?
Yeah.
I think as of late, not as much as I did when I was younger. Before though, but there was a large period of time where I didn't wear a lot of clothes, and I think I was more recognizable than my chubby little body wandering around. But now I stay pretty under the radar.
Well, right, and I was thinking about this before.
Yourself, probably not so much.
I get recognized a fair amount.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, too, about how, fame is such a fucking trap. And, I mean, the last thing anybody wants to hear is somebody complaining about, the problems with fame, because certainly nobody's trading it in. And when you get paid to do what you want and have people give you all kinds of respect and adoration, that, it's great, and it's all I ever wanted, and I love it. However, it's the scariest thing to imagine, being famous and just falling apart and being broke, and there's sort of something about fame and then losing it that's really scary. And I feel like you were kind of there with all the fame stuff, but you kind of just ducked out of it.
Yeah.
And managed to kind of be a regular person, Yeah. I think there's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think while you were saying that, I was thinking of this thing that somebody said to me one time. They said that you can become infamous, but you can't become unfamous.
I like that.
So, you get notoriety from Jackass, from CKY, Viva La Bam, all those things, and at that period in time, it was you couldn't go anywhere without having to answer to that, and I got freaked out by it.
Oh yeah, so is that the story? I was trying to kind of figure out.
Yeah.
What was the?
I basically got freaked out and wasn't sure that was the direction that I wanted to keep going. I was sort of sort of torn though, because I was on the fence about, do I, because I didn't do the second Jackass, I didn't do the third, and I was kind of no longer around, and just fell off the face of the earth, and that was sort of by design. And I think it was also because I realized and I've learned a lot of this through recovery stuff, is that I struggled a lot with control issues, so then I realized when I was drinking and doing drugs and stuff and being crazy like that, I could relinquish control to the other people and to what notoriety or fame becomes, because you think that you're kind of doing your own thing, but you're also sort of under the control of others. You know what I mean? In terms of this is what your image is. You're Rab himself. You're the guy that shits on things and drinks like a motherfucker. So this is what we expect of you, And so
right. But then again, I mean, I'm in the similar boat. And I was also kind of curious how open you are about recovery. I mean, it's cool,
Yeah, I'm pretty open about it.
I don't think there's any reason to keep it like under wraps or anything.
Yeah, no, I think for me in the beginning it was like I kind of didn't run out there with a flag because I was trying to kind of be unknown myself. I was trying to get my own anonymity as a person.
I think that's a sort of a different conversation about anonymity, but with respect to
with
fame
recovery
and all that, I think I hear what you're saying, and for me, it was absolutely imperative that I learned to have some separation between my personal life and this persona of STEVEO, because back in the day I did not know how to turn it off, and I was fully I was fully trapped in it. You know,
I think I remember seeing you. I saw you it was like an Oakley party or something. I hadn't seen you in like maybe a couple months, and then you came running and you were wasted, and it was like like all this whole thing. I was like, oh my god, and this was at the point in time, I think, you know, maybe the second movie had come out, and I was like sort of like trying to fly under the radar, but then all of a sudden I'm with you, and it was like there was no flying under the radar right now.
Right.
And I think, like I said, it's a separate thing, but I was sort of trying to dodge that and get my own life back. So then when I got sober, I was sort of quiet about it, but then I became very open about it. And I see with you, and I saw this, I think, you know, from afar, but also just talking to you, you know, after you had gotten sober, as I saw, like, there was no option for you. It had to be public.
Well,
that you...
Right. I was more public with it than I needed to be. I mean, I certainly, by putting out that Demise and Rise documentary, which, if anybody doesn't know about it, it's like a fully graphic and explicit documentary about my downward spiral and just how desperately bad and fucked up my situation was with drugs and alcohol, and ultimately how, you know, I had the intervention and how I got sober. And we put it together. Jeff Tremaine put it together, and, you know, sort of after I'd been sober for a while, and it came out when I had a full year of sobriety. So it was more kind of retrospective. And I remember being really like nervous about it, thinking like, fuck, man, like people who have put their recovery out there and really waved it around like a flag have like such a track record for just getting loaded and blowing it. And like, am I cursing myself by doing that? And I was really nervous. And one thing that gave me hope was James Hetfield from Metallica, because he had a documentary that very much the same way put out his early recovery and like just showed him super vulnerable and afraid, and and it was, you know, all about recovery. And that documentary from Metallica just came and went, and they went back to doing their thing. And James Hetfield didn't like start writing songs about the 12 steps or anything, you know. Like it was you know, it kind of gave me hope, you know, and I thought, okay, like I'm gonna try and model myself after that. But we could have a whole discussion about anonymity, but I was just trying to make the point that, yeah, you had this image of the guy who shits on things and the guy who, you know, runs around naked and this and that's the persona. And you know, so did I. And I just you know, I just really, you know, it was about just finding separation. I didn't know if I wanted to continue to pursue a career in entertainment, you know, and ultimately, of course, I did. But I when I hear you saying that you had to just walk away from everything because of the persona, to me, I think, no, like if that's, you didn't have to do that. You just have to separate it and kind of have compartments for your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think though, at a, you know, I'm coming up on 10 years, and I think at 10 years ago, at a younger age, I don't know that I was able to kind of understand that. I think it was more of one or the other, and I got to save my life, I got to get out of this.
Hey, I'm not criticizing the decision at all.
No, I know.
If anything,
but I hear you that you're right in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, that's just how I did it. And so there I am trying to impose like my values on you, and that's not right at all. But and furthermore, I really think that your decision to go the route that you went is fucking healthy, man. I've heard it said by trusted sources that there is nothing whatsoever that's healthy about fame. Fame is like a fucking gnarly thing.
Yeah.
And it's scary, like the implications of you know, life after fame. You know, it's particularly like if things go bad, that's the fucking worst, man. You know.
Yeah, and I think I think part of that was a fear that I had at that time, and I think what helped, you know, helped me kind of pull away was that feeling of like I'm already on a course to self-destruction, and if I keep down this road, that was my thought at the time, you know, like if I keep going this direction, I'm dead, you know, and that was like kind of what I had thought.
That's never been much to stop people from getting loaded.
Yeah.
It's crazy, man.
Well, the funny part is too that I kind of walked away from that stuff, but then I continued drinking and drugging for a while.
Oh,
you know?
How about that?
You know, like still trying to like use that as my solution afterwards, like after being out of the public eye, after doing that, I still was like, all right, well, I'll just numb this, because I mean, all the feelings you go through with that too, of like you're yesterday's news or you're this or whatever, like that feeling was scary, like, oh man, I'm gonna drink that away too, you know.
And the weirdest thing too about it is that it's so like you're never right-sized, you know? Like, I can go through an airport and some people will be like so excited, and it's like, you know, they treat you in a certain way that's just not reality, and you can, like, you know, identify with that. And then I'll turn around and see another people like, hey, what, man, I haven't seen you on, you know, on anything in a long time. Like, whatever happened to you? And then that hurts so much, and it's just like, fuck, man, it's just pretty gnarly, you know. And again, I'm not trying to complain about like the situation of being a famous person. I'm just saying that I really respect the pitfalls and the you know, potential nightmares that follow it. And I don't want to open up a can of worms or anything, but it's surprising to hear you say that you walked away from it for those reasons, because I had always been under the impression that it was more of something in your relationship with Bam, and that you guys kind of had a falling out, and that it was less of you walking away from Jackass and fame and more of you walking away from Bam. And I mean,
yeah, and I think that at that time it was certainly muddy waters. Like there were multiple layers of what things were, and for sure, like, I mean, you know, I actually haven't talked about this publicly at all.
There I go with my can of worms.
Yeah. But the thing is, I had never talked about it because, like, I didn't feel like it was something people either wanted to hear. You know, like, I mean, you think about, like, okay, certain things you do, it's like, it's a bummer. Like, why talk about that? But then, you know, what I had learned from it and how I've grown from it, like I've gotten to a place where I can talk about it, and I don't have a resentment there, and there isn't things that you know.
I think that it's been long enough since all of that happened that like nobody's probably really concerned about it, and I don't think it would be surprising. I don't think it would surprise anybody. I mean, maybe like.
But it was like at the time when it happened, when that was all going down. I mean, here, like, to give you a picture of what it was. At the end of Viva La Bam, the 5th season, the last episode, we were filming a pickup shot from the Finland episode that we had done, and the producer girl was like, okay, this is going to be like the last shot. And I was like, looked at her, I was like, this is like the last shot? This is like the last shot we have to do of anything? And she's like, yeah, this is anything. I was like guaranteed I'm not getting called back for anything. And she's like, yeah, like, what? And so I turned my car on, did the pickup shot, got in the car, drove off, and was like, I'm never fucking talking to those people again. And I knew that in my mind, and there was years that went by that I did that.
Wow, I didn't know.
Because I literally, I mean, yes, there was a falling out with Bam. I had gotten to a point with him where I couldn't stand to be around him, with the ego, with the way that fame had done that to him, with the way, you know, that, you know, he had treated some of us and those kind of things. And so I was completely furious and over it.
Sure.
And so
and
then
I don't think that, you know,
I walked away from that and was like, I need to do that for my own right thing, as far as like friendships and relationships. I've felt like should be respectful on both sides, and so that was a separate sort of issue to things.
Right.
But then, of course, like Ryan called me when the second one's happened, and he's like, dude, fuck all this nonsense like that you got going on with him. Like, come shoot this thing. And I was like, I'm good, man. Like, I'm good, because at that point, I had started to sort of taste what it tasted like to like go back into my regular Chris from Westchester, Pennsylvania, like some small town kid. Like, I started to feel what that felt like, and I was like, I like this. You know, I like that feeling of going away from that.
You know, that makes me really interested in hearing about Deco, Brandon DiCamillo.
Yeah, and I think that
he was a principal cast member throughout the I mean, I guess we didn't have opening credits and principal cast members, but like, he was a major fucking player.
Yeah.
You know, he was a major player throughout the TV series, and he just decided not to be in the first movie, which, as I understood it, his rationale was, I don't want to make a bunch of money for greedy corporate assholes. And that just, like, I didn't understand that at all, because I was like, wow, you know, Brandon, why don't, like, you're talking about you're going to make no money for anybody. I was like, I'm going to make as much money for these greedy assholes as I possibly can, so that, you know, it's paying your dues. You know, I'm going to fucking become a Frankenstein monster and break out of their lab. You know? That's what I wanted to do.
Well, and I think, like...
But he probably, like you, has a much healthier outlook and a much healthier, you know, identity and lifestyle.
And I don't know that it was necessarily healthier at the time. I think part of it might have been based out of fear, you know, like of, will I be able to be all right myself if I go this direction, if I do that?
And when you say that you were from a small town guy, like, is that in Pennsylvania?
Yeah. Like Westchester, that's where we grew up.
So you're from Westchester, and so do you have an ongoing relationship with DiCamillo?
Yeah.
And how's he doing? What's his
He's good, man.
like?
And that's the thing. I think it's a similar feeling of like I've gone out and started doing this podcast, and
how many episodes have you done so far?
Maybe 38 or something like that. So I've gone out and done those, and started doing, like, you know.
Is it going to be weird to put this one on yours?
That one?
Yeah.
No, I think it'll be awesome, because I'm hijacking the STEVEO podcast right now.
It's a test drive, man. I wanted to do your podcast, but I want to learn how to do mine.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's awesome. But no, I started kind of doing that and doing the Instagram thing, and so it's sort of putting me back out into that realm a little bit. And I was nervous to do that, because I had kind of had a life that was just quiet and away from all of it.
It was really weird when you went from being on camera to being like part of the crew.
Yeah.
That wasn't on camera, but working for, you did that for Dick House?
I did. I worked on Bad Grandpa.
Oh shit!
But only a little bit.
What was that like?
Pretty much like the end of it. What happened was I was
hearing stories about like Knoxville and Tremaine being kind of at each other's throats.
Yeah, they did a pretty good job of keeping that kind of under wraps. Like they were separated a lot.
Unbelievable how they've navigated, like, professionally through. I mean, how are you gonna have any kind of relationship, especially a creative one, without having some kind of turbulence along the way?
Yeah, I feel like part of that is sort of good in a way. Like, it creates some stuff. But yeah, no, I began working as like a production assistant back in Philly on some commercials and stuff, as I like started getting my life back together once I got sober and doing that stuff. And then I saw Jeff Tremaine. He came out right around the time of Ryan's death for the tribute. And I was like, hey dude, I'm moving out to LA in a couple months. And he was like, oh, well, look me up, you know, like, when you get here, like, was that
weird at all? Like, did he say anything to the effect of like, I know it's probably like, you know, I don't want you to feel insulted, but I'd be happy for you to work on the crew, or anything like that?
No, like, for me, like, shit, I was already at a place like, dude, I mean, I literally went to bartending. You know, so I was already at a place. I had been humbled, you know. So I told this story, I think, on the last week.
I don't know, like, I mean, I don't like to pick any example, but like people we know, I think like it's, you know, it's got to come to a point where it's like, all right, like, you're gonna like get a regular job, and I mean, to be someone who was a principal cast member in like a #1 box office movie. And then all of a sudden now, like, okay, I'm out of options. And I got to figure out, like, am I going to drive an Uber?
Right.
I mean, I don't know really anybody's situation that intimately to be able to determine, like, if that's really the kind of options that they have. But I know that, I know that that's a fucking scary situation if it is the case.
Yeah, and it was for me, and I had mentioned this one time, but like I started out waiting tables. I had never waited tables ever in my life.
I used to do that, but I got fired before I stopped training.
Yeah. Well, I should have been fired, except the owner felt so bad that he kept me doing it. Because the one girl comes and goes, You've never done this before, right? I'm like, yeah, is it that obvious? You know? But anyway, started doing it. I think I made $40 at lunch, and I felt like, holy shit, what happened? You know?
Right.
And there was a kid there that had said something to me that was rough to hear. He had said, oh man, like, what are you doing working here? And I was like, I don't know. He's like, man, I used to think those Jackass guys were dumb. Like, now I know they're really dumb. And I was like, damn, like it hurt because I was like, like, and you know, it's a respectable job if people have to have a job, do what you gotta do. And like for me, but it felt like, so you're calling me stupid because somehow you thought that I was rich and I'm not, and I need to get a job to get my life moving.
Right.
But whatever. So I went through that stuff and did that. So I think that was humbling in that regard. And then when it came time to come and be on the crew side of things and start at the first, the lowest position of PA.
It was probably kind of cool to just be in that environment and not have any like.
Right. And it not be about me. Like it was really kind of awesome to get another side of the experience. And when it came down to me thinking, like I had finished college, and did all that, and like, and it came down to thinking of like, what would I be good at? It made sense. Like I've spent all these years doing the entertainment industry. It would make more sense if I went to the other side. And
that makes me want to ask about Ray Gillen. What, like he sort of had his career as like a chemist or some weird shit.
He's just always been a chemist and happens to be doing this wild shit on the side.
Right. And so
he would talk about like
did he get sober? Because I felt like he might have been sort of inching into a little bit of trouble with substances.
Yeah, no, I don't. He never got sober, but
he's just one of those robots who could get away with it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like
I went pretty deep with him a few times.
Yeah. Same here. Yeah, he went deep. But the thing about him, and I look at him almost the same as his dad. Like his dad is like an Australian rugby player guy that just always drank beers and smashed heads and whatever. And so like Ray went way harder than that. But
like I haven't seen or heard anything from Rake in so long. Does he just look exactly the same? Or?
Yeah, but his hair is getting gray, so now he's even more the mad scientist.
Okay,
it's rad. It's rad.
He's turning into the guy from Back to the Future.
Yep, 100%. Yeah. Yeah.
That's great, man.
But no, he's doing good. I mean, he still drinks beers, but he actually slowed it down on the other side of the.
Oh my God! Yeah, we were doing some serious mogul skiing.
Yeah, and then it got crazier than that. Yeah.
Oh, it got crazier.
Double black diamond. I mean, from what I've heard, but yeah. So then it like he's a dad these days. And,
okay. And, how about like for you? I wanted to ask that when you were sort of in the mix and on camera, and like when you sort of had the most notoriety, were you turning that into like a lot of promiscuous sex? Did you crush a lot of beef?
Yeah, it worked out.
So, because some people like just aren't that way, and you seem to me like, like everything else aside, like sort of a not like a big time pussy crusher,
Yeah. I mean, it worked out. I toured a lot, and then it was what
was the touring?
With CKY, the band, and stuff like that, and then going out with DJs and promoting Viva La Bam and doing that kind of stuff. And And yeah, and it was wild for a good while. I mean, I'm no Gene Simmons or whatever, but I definitely had a lot of fun. And
did you keep track of how many chicks you had sex with?
No, you can't. How the hell would you ever know that?
Well, I like when I moved out to California, one of the first things I did was
you did.
I wrote down as many as I could come up with.
Really?
Like, just confirmed kills.
Okay.
Yeah, and
yeah, no, I think like
I was up to 72 when I got out to California, and that was in 2001.
Okay, yeah, and then
I remember
that.
stopping counting at 165.
Oh wow, that's hilarious! I was like, it's hilarious that you counted that long. I know,
and I was like, I was figuring out, like, you know, slay was the big word for getting laid, you know, and I'm like, they're like, what are you doing? I'm writing them down my list, and like, I'm calculating my slay point average. Like,
oh my god, that's hilarious.
80 girls in a year?
It was something pretty absurd, man. Yeah, and like.
You said 80 girls in a year?
To be honest, like when
I thought that would be more than that.
No.
Okay.
But when
I remember there was one time where I could remember 16 girls in 14 days.
You did?
Yeah.
Attaboy.
And I could remember, like, and there was a lot of those where you go out on a run of a little tour. And
I think that my best was like. Best. These fucking words. I'm saying attaboy and best. Like,
I'm married and life is good.
I mean, dude, it's a fucking crazy. I mean, I wear this as an engagement ring, and I do want to say that, like, just revealing those numbers, like, I'm like not only ashamed, but I'm a little bit mortified for, like, you know,
well,
like, what if my girl was listening? If she's heard me say all this stuff before,
but
I see how it affects her. And I fucking hate it, man.
Yeah. Well, that and also like I mean, not to get back to the recovery thing, but when I got to that thing of like, oh, like sex inventory, I'm like,
when I first did my sex
inventory, I did a lot of things.
My first sex inventory was like another writing down my SPA. You know, like I was like flipping through the pages, look at how many of them there are. Like I had another like level of sobriety to achieve, and now I've got, you know, multiple years.
Yeah.
Consecutive years of sexual sobriety, you know.
Oh yeah,
that was the whole deal, man. I got really, really deep in the sex program too. And,
oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, like, so I can like kind of talk about my sordid past, and you know,
feel good about the fact
and feel good about the fact that, like, you know, hey.
And I kind of, that's sort of the way, like, you know, my wife and I, like, she does.
How long you been married?
Year and a half.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So.
And what does she do?
She's a therapist and a yoga instructor.
Okay.
So she's a therapist for the homeless.
Wow.
And works.
So does that make her a government employee?
For nonprofit. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So
that's the kind of thing my girl, I could see her doing.
Yeah. So, but we, you know, like I've known her since first grade, and we've known each other our whole lives, and she knew me in those years of like maybe when it wasn't a good idea to try to husband me up. You know what I mean? And so we laugh about that, and you know, and it's kind of like, yeah, anything you could think of, I probably did that. You know,
right,
sexually or whatever. But so, you know, it was a thing. But for me, and not to sound too, you know, lame on the other side of it, what I realized though in those years when I was running around and doing all that, it was a very empty feeling for me. It was this thing that I thought I needed to do. I thought that, oh, because I'm Rab from this TV show, I got to go have sex with hookers, and then I got to sleep with every girl that comes my way and do this and that. And I did that for a while. And then I started to feel like I'm trying to live up to what somebody else thinks my image should be, and this is just empty as shit. And it didn't feel right for me, you know. And then I think as I got sober and worked through that stuff, it was like, oh, now I have an excuse of why I can truly be me. You know what I mean? Like I could almost hide behind my recovery in a way to say, oh, now I can actually be honest to myself and do this and go, oh, it's because I'm sober now, guys. That's why, you know, like, and then, you know,
wow,
I could,
that's crazy.
And it was like, but I found my way back to me through the recovery, although I could sensed that it was slipping away as I was justifying it with the drinking and the drugs and all that other stuff, and allowing and okaying it by doing that. And then now I feel just more whole and more complete, and you know, in that.
Did you and Bam ever like kind of sort things out? And
did we ever dock? Is that what you were going to ask? Did we ever dock? Did we ever?
I don't know what dock means.
Yeah,
but...
to put your penises together and slip the. No. But people have tried. But no, have we ever?
Like just kind of resolved anything?
Mended our ways. Yeah, like I think I'll be honest. Like.
It's not been that easy to really try to have like a healthy relationship with Bam for some time.
Yeah, that's been that way for a long time, and even long before. Like I kind of saw that ship sinking long before anyone else did, and that was partly why I was like, I got to get away from this. But also when Ryan died, it was like we immediately just like hugged and cried, and and it was like, and in a way that kind of just made me feel, and I know made him feel like, all right, like whatever that is, we'll talk about that at some point, and then we did, you know, like, but I think
what did that look like, and when was that? The
conversations.
Well, I mean, I don't want to necessarily make you talk about stuff that's not appropriate.
No, but like at that point of. So I hadn't seen him in years, and I bumped into him because his brother plays in a band, the Company Band, and they were doing a practice, and Jess was like, hey, come over for the practice. I was like, oh, cool. And then Bam showed up, and I was like, yo, what the fuck? You just ambushed my ass? Like, that's what I thought he did.
Do you think that Jess set that up?
I thought he did, and then he was like, no, I seriously didn't. And I'm like, okay. And so it was just weird because at that point he came in and it was Novak was there, and Novak was a fucking mess, and they were like, yeah, we just like fucked this prostitute or whatever, or porn star or whatever. We just did this porn star on camera and this, and I was like, damn, this is what y'all into? Okay, whatever. Like I just was in this like, all right, I haven't seen you in years, and then you're immediately like, oh, Novak just had sex with this porn star and I videoed it, and then this, and I was like, damn, this fell off, like, you know, in a weird way. For me, I was like,
do you feel like Novak came in to sort of fill the position that you had earlier, and that
well, I think
that by definition, everything that made you walk away was that your standards were higher, and then enter Novak, who by definition had lower standards.
Yeah.
And so everything was just like lower and lower. Like, as everything just went, like, kind of on a downhill trajectory.
Yeah, I think that there was a level of, like, Bam had this idea of having someone that was sort of a yes man or a whipping boy of sorts.
Well, yeah, for sure.
And tried to kind of put me into that role, and as I didn't like that role and shifted away from that, yes, Novak slid into that.
Yeah, because that was how I understood the dynamic when, you know, like, when you and Bam had the falling out, was just sort of that it's like, hey, I get it that you have this brand of comedy where you beat up your dad and like you're kind of like, you know, sort of like, you know, a dick, but it's when the cameras are rolling and people really enjoy it, and so you do that and that's your job. But that doesn't mean that when the cameras aren't rolling that like I'm not worthy of respect. You know, like, they don't like buy into the hype and like believe that you're better than everybody, and that like that you can whip on people and treat them like shit because, like, look, you know, that's just not what I'm about.
And that absolutely bled into every area of life when the cameras were not on. So that was what was hard to be around.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I definitely saw Novak slide into that.
And then now he can get away with more, and like, and it's sort of like,
and he's not being checked on any of it
with all the drugs.
Novak's just going, I'll do it because then I can get money for drugs or whatever. And, you know,
my God.
Yeah.
Do you have a relationship with Novak now?
Yeah, absolutely. I love Novak. I mean, he's you know, like a brother and always has been, and I always loved him even when he was struggling hard, because he has a good heart, and like, you know, it's just a good dude.
It's I yelled at Novak on the set of Jackass 3 because I was like, dude, you're fucking Dream Seller book. I think this is what it was. I was like, I was reading your Dream Seller book.
This is on the third one. You said
The
like, so
third
you were
movie.
sober, right?
So I had I had 2 years of sobriety at this point, you know, and I was all, 2 years. Not that there's like a thing, but I was all on fire for it.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been on fire for it, but I told him I'm reading this Dream Seller book of yours, and like plainly, you understand like the disease of addiction.
Yeah.
You know, like you get it. Like I'm reading in this book that you understand like everything about about the disease, about recovery, about how it works. You know, like what you need to be doing, and you're just not doing it, and that just sucks, man. That sucks. It's like you know exactly what the fuck's going on, and you're just choosing not to fucking treat it.
Well,
you fucking asshole.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
And he was
but
just like, and he was just like,
yeah. But he also chose to use that to his advantage to be able to manipulate. To be able to say, hey, like, I'm doing this and this and that, to the people that don't know will think, oh, he's doing that.
Sure.
And then taking advantage of that, you know?
Right.
He
worry
is nothing short of a miracle in terms of, like, having done this.
I worry about how he doesn't have, like, where I said I had to have separation between my persona and my personal life.
Yeah.
Like like for me to just like be healthy and continue, I need to be able to turn it off and not be STEVEO.
Right.
And
which is awesome, because when I knew you when we were younger, there's no such thing.
Right. I had no interest in doing that.
Yeah.
But I feel like for Novak, I worry that he doesn't have an off switch for the recovery. Like where like he brings the recovery into his professional life, into his public life. Like he's so like, you know, like every post on Instagram, it's like all about this, and here's my phone number and this and that, and I worry a little bit about him just like making that so forefront and center.
Yeah,
he seems to be getting away with it, and like it's written all over him. I mean, it's evident to look at him that he's the real deal, that he's really sober.
Yeah,
but I would want him to have a little bit of separation between his recovery,
finding a balance,
and his public life. You know,
right? And I think that for me, my take on it was that I hope or trust that will come in time.
Right.
You know, because I mean, realistically, still new to it in terms of like, I mean, we all are, but like I feel like as the years unfold, I feel like some of that balance starts to fall into place more. I
think so too. And it's really scary that of all occupations, the one with the highest, the jobs with the highest relapse rate for drug addicts is any job that where you work in recovery. That means the counselors working in the rehabs. That's almost like completely fucking backwards. You think, wait a second, the people who are the most immersed in treatment for chemical dependency addiction, that's like saying the people that are working in the hospital are the people getting cancer the most, you know?
Yeah, right,
it seems like so fucking backwards.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, is that like when you like professionalize your recovery,
yes,
like it becomes really slippery, and that's why I worry about Novak.
Absolutely, and I moved back to the Philadelphia area for a year, last year or whatever, and I lived there for a year, and then we came back here. And when I was there, I had a sponsor there that is a therapist and works in the recovery field, but also was my sponsor, and he very much addressed that and spoke to that a lot, and said that he had to come to terms within himself while working in that industry that he had to be able to separate those two, and he knew that there was a time where he was justifying not going to meetings, not getting open, and not doing that stuff because he's like, I'm doing all this work with this and this, and you justify that.
I just spent the whole day in a fucking rehab. What am I gonna go to a meeting now?
Yeah, it's and it was like, yes,
crucially, right, and like, I don't want it to sound like I'm shitting on Novak. I mean, I'm so proud of him.
Yeah, it's a good concern because he's a friend, you know.
Yeah, it's just.
Yeah, and that was my thought, was that I'm trusting and hoping that will come within time, and you know, and you know yourself, like you said, you're on fire, and you always are, but like there's I think there, for me personally, and I'll speak for myself on it, is that there are moments where I'm like, whoa, I'm crazy on fire about it, and then I start, like, not that I back off from it, but that I recognize, like, oh, whoa, I'm getting a little over zealous with this, and then okay, balance that out and kind of get myself, because anyone like us does it to its extremes.
I can relate to that, but my experience has been that life has just on its own presented me with challenges or like just stressors, anxiety. Like I wrote this movie script, and I was like, oh, and I was so excited about it, and then I shared it with, with the agents and this producer, and they were like, "No, we don't." And I was like, "Huh?" And I just felt like everything I was trying just wasn't working. I'm like, fuck. And then ultimately, it got to the point where it stressed me out so badly. I just said, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just gonna like not even just worry about it. I'm just gonna just lean in to my recovery and like all of the things that we do.
Yeah.
And like I'm just gonna make that my number one priority. I'm gonna make it the only fucking thing that I worry about. And like I've done that like at various stages over the last 11 years, more recently, and I've found that it really.
Well, it's incredible because it's this thing that someone said to me early on, and this I have found to be true, is they say if you take care of your number one problem, everything else will fall into place.
100%.
And like, so with stuff like that, it's like every
time I recommit to my recovery, and every time I just really get diligent about it, everything else just works out.
Yeah. And so it's like, well, and not to get cheesy, but that like man's rejection is God's protection sort of thing. So like, so if this certain studio wasn't interested, maybe there's something else down the road, or maybe it opens up other opportunities, and and that's where I think that kind of falls into line with that.
Maybe that shit's not important. Maybe that's the fucking message.
Yeah, and I've had that feeling a lot lately too. Was like, and I've been talking about this thought that the extraordinary is in the ordinary, like that whole thought of like, I needed all these grandiose things, or accomplishments and this and that, and you realize like, damn, dude, just walking around the neighborhood with my wife is the best shit there is. You know what I mean? Like those moments, I think, in life, like where you kind of overlook that stuff, and that's actually like the goal.
Yeah,
right there,
I mean, there's that, and there's also the fact of like, here, like what I just said, I think is like important to me. To just like, okay, because when you said sometimes I'm not like as diligent, I'm not as plugged in, and I'm straying away from the program, like I think, is that me? And and no, like the answer really is like, no, like when life presents shit that fucking stresses me out and scares me and gives me like, that sends me back into my program, and fuck yeah, and then that makes me feel so grateful that that like, it's so scary being fucking human, dude. Like,
oh yeah,
I say this a lot more and more, like in the circles of recovery, that like it's really fucking scary, like the human experience, because for starters, no matter how well it goes, your life, as humans, we've got one instinct, which is to survive, and one guarantee, which is we won't.
Right. yeah.
So it's like out of the gate, we're like headed straight at the one fucking thing that we are most afraid of, and
yeah.
And we can't avoid it. And along the way, We're gonna get older, where like our bodies deteriorate, our fucking appearances become shittier, people become less interested in us, our earnings potential goes down, we become fucking infirm and unhealthy and unwell, like and like that's our experience. That's the path we're on. And like that's fucking scary. That's the kind of shit that makes me think like, oh my God, like I can't handle the stressor, like it's just bothering me so much. I gotta just not worry about anything, and I gotta fucking lean into my program. And like we have like this gift as men in recovery, women in recovery. We have like these tools to like really help with, because like humility is coming for all of us, no matter who you are. Like no matter who you are, and like and the human experience is gonna get ugly no matter who you are. And like, and when the shit comes down, and it's gonna for everybody, and when it does come down, it's people who have adopted like this kind of an approach to their problems and to life that we have, you know, with these tools of recovery. We're in such better shape.
No, absolutely, man. I mean, that's those moments that I have, you know, on a daily basis, really, of just being like, God damn, I'm lucky that I have this, because there's people that don't have that help or that guidance in that direction. And like, man, how the hell do you do it? because when it does kick your ass, you go, oh, there's a bunch of people here to pick me up and get me moving again. And that's just that's an incredible thing, you know.
And the world is full of people who don't have shit, who get by just fine and are perfectly healthy and happy. And like, I think of the people who are really like rich, famous, this and that, like they control like such the smallest, like, you know, it's the smallest percentage of people that control the most amount of wealth and happen to be like the least happy.
Absolutely. Dude, it's crazy. That just reminded me, because my wife and I, we started a nonprofit and we do work in Haiti, and we go down there and we stay, you know, with our friends in, you know, in the villages, and you know, and they don't have much of anything, but they have everything. Because they're connected to the universe. They have this happy thing. They're dancing, laughing, joking, doing this. I'm going, damn, like at home people were like, oh, the Starbucks doesn't have the right soy milk, you know, and like, and then I'm like, they're just like, life's awesome, right, man? And you're like, yeah. It's crazy. Like,
and I think that the way that you sort of, you know, you got into the you got into the public eye, the whole, you know, got a name for yourself. And then like, but you didn't get so into it, and you were able to kind of come back out of the fire and become like a normal person. Like there's nothing fucking healthy about fame. Like I'm personally kind of terrified by it.
Yeah, me too. Me too. That's why I hold a camera now instead of standing in front of one. Yeah.
But anyway, here we are, dude. We made it to the destination.
Hell yeah. It's been awesome to for the maiden voyage of the STEVEO podcast, which I'm hijacking for the Bathroom Break podcast.
That's right.